couple of, I've got a couple of, sorry, I'll just quickly start again. Yeah, just for those people who are watching a recording. Thanks, Claire, for the introduction. And we're a relatively small group. Thanks, Lauren, for your question that came earlier. Well, I really want to touch on that and use that as maybe a little bit of a case study or an example as we go through it. Feel free to, as Claire said, leave your camera off or turn your camera on. It doesn't faze me at all. It would be nice to sort of see some faces, but if that's not the case, I completely understand. What I would encourage you to do is use the chat line, because the chat is the way we're going to interact, and it has to be interactive because I can't sit and deliver a lecture and just talk at you. I just refuse to be a talking head. You won't learn anything that way. I want to be able to share some stuff with you, get some feedback from you. So if you've got a pen, get really active. I'm not doing slides deliberately because I don't want people just taking a photograph of a slide. You won't learn anything. So what I'd love to do, can we start with where you're dialing in from? I'll kick off. Just drop it in the chat line. I'm in New Zealand, flew into Auckland this afternoon. I've got a few days over here with some clients. If anyone, who else has got, sorry, where are you from? Where are you dialing in from? Lauren, where are you these days? Okay, thought so. Thanks, Lauren. Yeah. Nice one. In your pajamas, great. That's good. Oh, you're also in New Zealand. Great, Kelly. Gold Coast, Collaroy, Sydney, Melbourne. Pakura Bay. Where's that, Peg? Is that North or South Island? Gold Coast. Nice. Okay, good. So people are kind of, I'm in Melbourne next week, actually, Rebecca. Oh, just north of Wellington. Okay. All right. Let's start off by I want to highlight probably, let's start the very basics. Why do people resist change? And what's the primary reason? And I think hidden in this message is that, hidden in an understanding of this is why we are so often miss the mark with getting people to change. Do you want to have a crack at it? Just drop in the chat line. What do you think is the number one reason that people? I'm going to give you two. I'm going to give you two to choose from. Oh yeah, fear. Great, Kelly. Well, yeah. Okay, so that fits in. Yep. Requires more effort. Yep. Because we're used to doing things a particular way. Yep. Laziness, uncertainty, lack of understanding of the vision. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Habit threatens our security. Change of routine. Every single one of them fits into the primary reason why we resist change. And yet that's not what we focus on. In my experience, it's not what we focus on. So two primary resistors for change are social and technical. They're the two main reasons why people will resist change. So technical one might be, well, maybe the laziness one fits into the technical one in that we've been operating in a particular system for so long and I don't want to change the system. Okay. So it's a technical thing where I've got to change what we're doing. And for me, I just don't want to do it because I don't understand how to do it. I haven't been trained properly on it. So I'm just going to do it the old way. I'm going to keep doing it the old way. And as a result, we're going to look at these people and go, come on, like we've made a decision on this, or more often than not, the leaders made a decision and told the team what to do, which is a bit problematic, but well, it can certainly lead to more even deeper resistance. I'll talk about that later. But the primary reason why people resist change is social, and it's how is this going to affect my life? How does this affect my day? I'm going to give you a really good example of this. A vet practice rang me and said, I have got so many clients now that I'm going to use his words, they're not my words, where he described them as C and D grade clients. Okay, that was his description, not mine. It happens to be how Aldi Foods categorize their clients as well, by the way, customers across the globe. But so they're C's and D's. He said C's and D's don't pay. They whinge at the drop of a hat. They are uninsured. And you can imagine an A client is the opposite, right? And he said so much so that my A clients are being pushed out by up to 3 weeks. They can't even get in because our book's full. Now, it's not always the case, is it? Like there are times when it's super quiet in the clinic, but that was the case at this particular moment. He rang me and said, Paul, what should I do? And I said, well, look, one of the basic tenets of economics is that the supply and demand curve can be adjusted by changing your price. So if there's an over demand for a product, well, the price goes up, and that just lowers the demand. And now demand can meet supply. So you get that sort of equilibrium. If there's an oversupply and there's no demand, we've got to drop our prices, right? So it's just a really basic economic theory. So I said, well, let's just apply that to your practice now. What are you charging for a consult? And I can't remember the exact numbers, but it was something like $90 for a 20-minute consult. Now, New Zealand, you probably might find that is quite expensive. Some people, I don't want to make a judgment call around that at all, and I don't want this conversation to go down that path. So just hold on any judgment around that. But that was $90, right? And I said, all right, so what do you reckon it would need to go to put off the C's and D's where the A's and B's wouldn't care? And he said, no idea. Right, think about it. So he went away and he thought about it, came back, and he increased his price to over 100, and I think it was like 140, maybe it was high 30s, $130 for a 20-minute consult. And I did share with him from a client perspective that the quicker I can get out of a veterinary hospital, the better. Like, I like vets. I've been working with you for a long time, right? But veterinary hospitals, the dog's stressed, standard poodles, they tend to get quite stressed in that sort of environment. And I just want to get out of there. I don't need to hang around for any perception of value, right? So 20 minutes, perfect for me. If you could do it in 10, I'd be even happier, as long as I was getting the value, right? So let's just set aside the length of time, but he put his prices up. And lo and behold, what do you reckon happened? Chuck it in the chat line. What do you think happened? Put his prices up. What do you reckon the C's and D clients did? And then I want to talk about where the resistance to change come. Yeah, they kicked up a stink. No, they didn't stay, Lauren. Interesting, isn't it? They didn't stay. Some probably did. And they complained, right? Now, if we think about the resistance to change, which is a social and technical resistance to change, the technical aspect of changing your prices, I'm going to say from $90 to $135, which is a pretty substantial price rise straight away. The technical component of that's really straightforward. You just stick it in the system, right? And it just spits out a new price. So technically that wasn't hard. The resistance was going to come from the vets who now have to explain to their clients why the prices have increased. And that's just spoiling their day, because they just feel like, well, what about the pensioners? And what about, I don't want to have this conversation. Everyone thinks we're a rip-off anyway. And I said, all right, so what if you could? So I said to the client, how about you, let's tackle this social resistance to change. How are you going to stop that from happening? And he came back with the answer, which I thought was fantastic. And he said, I need to tell the clients before they come in, so they can do all the whinging and whining over the phone. So the vets aren't having to say that, having to have that conversation. That was the first thing. He said the second thing is, I don't think I'm going to tell them the prices have gone from 90 to 135. I'm just going to tell our price is 135. And he put it in the text message to the client in the booking reminder text message. So all the C's and D's dropped out and didn't even turn up, or rang and said, you're a bloody ripoff. And the reception team perfectly capable of handling that. They've got a different competency level to different set of competencies to a veterinarian, haven't they? They're kind of a bit more robust in that area, because they're not as close to it. It's not offensive to them. It's, look, that's our price, and I'm sorry, that's what it is. Don't even need to apologize. It's just what it is. And so they fielded those calls, and he'd recruited well in that area. So those people were really good at that. They kind of just water off a duck's back. And guess what the A's and B's did? It's when I didn't even know what the price was anyway. And they kept coming. So he pivoted his business really quickly. But the reason why I say that is not to necessarily draw that as an example of something you should go and do, but you'd have to sort of work that out. But to highlight the fact that when it comes to social resistance and technical resistance, he could have banged on all day long about the technical aspect of, we need to charge more because we're not making enough money, and here's the P&L, and let me break it down for you, and I'll describe to you the cost of goods. And people get all of that. The reason why they just resisted is because they're a bit lazy, but they just don't want to have those conversations, and they don't want to have that day where they've got to feel like they're they're going to be abused all day or whatever from clients who think they're too expensive. So a really nice story that highlights these two aspects of resistance to change. And if you're thinking about any change process, have a think about, is this like a technical thing that's blocking this, or is it purely a social one? And if it is a social one and it affects their day, how could you fix it? For example, if I was working with a team and they said, I don't even know how I'm going to have this conversation with the clients about something like, say, a price rise, I would train my team on that. And I am so surprised, I'm getting less surprised at how little training we do in the industry. If the army, which is a lot of my background in the infantry, if we took that approach to training, getting people upskilled, there'll be a lot of dead people. We have got to spend, and I don't mean to be a car, but we've got to spend more time getting people upskilled. So if the first time your junior vets are facing an upset client about a price or a new product that you're introducing, if the first time they're actually having that conversation is with a client, that's like sending an infantry soldier out into combat. First time they fire their weapon is it a bad guy or the enemy. That's nuts. We've got to be doing that with us internally with ourselves. And I always think a great way to train that would be, and I'm sort of segueing a little bit here, but I think a great way to do that would be to have three people just pull their chairs into a little star cluster and have one person play the client and have some fun with that, right? And one person play the vet or the nurse or whatever, the reception, and then one person be an observer. And let the observer watch what's taking place and then give some critical feedback and say, so how did that feel? I felt terrible, like I pinned my ears back with all this tirade of abuse. Okay, so how are you going to handle it? Because it may happen. What are you going to do? Can't think of anything? Okay, let's rotate roles now. Someone else play vet, someone else play client. And that sort of training should be done. You just got to do more of it. Like that is setting people up for success rather than just throwing them in the deep end and expecting that to. Yeah, I'm sort of digressing a little bit. Okay, so that's resistance to change. Let's now look at sort of two primary kind of buckets that change fits into. The first one is around the psychology of change, and the other one is how to plan for change in advance. So I'll talk about planning first. We at Lincoln refer to Kotter because we quite like Kotter, and you can Google it yourself, but Kotter's 8 Steps of Change, Kotter. But essentially, I just want to focus on the first 3 of the 8. And that's the preparatory phase. And I should have said at the beginning, drop any questions in, any examples, just drop it in the chat line. Just as you're thinking about it, just chuck it in there. It doesn't matter. We'll circle back to it in the last sort of 15 minutes or so. Or if I can pick it up while we're talking, I will. So the 3 planning areas of change or things that have to be done from a preparatory point of view. The first one is we've got to create a sense of urgency. And so what goes with that is that if it isn't broken, why are we trying to fix it? We've all heard that expression. So how do you create a sense of urgency around something? Would anyone like to just throw in the chat line a change that they would just love to implement, and then let's have a look at how we could create a sense of urgency around that. Why is it important that we do it? Not from the practice manager or the practice owner's perspective, because arguably, and I'll just use this as an example, it's certainly not always the case, but it might be about, the money and generating more revenue. This is new Brevecto injection that you're all aware of. That's a big one at the moment. How do I convince my team to change to recommend that when it's a 12-month injection? And, that could have other effects when maybe there aren't many ticks around and aren't many fleas around. I don't know. I don't want to get into a discussion around whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. But if you're trying to encourage your team to actually do something like that, then we've got to create a sense of urgency around that. So drop in the chat line if you can think of something. Otherwise, I'll come up with something. Okay, Great, Cassidy. Let's run with that. First cab off the rank. Getting a security fob access system installed in our 24/7 hospital. Okay, so are you getting resistance around that, Cassidy? Is it? You can turn your microphone on and talk. You don't have to turn your camera on, or you can.
Yeah, so there's a little bit of resistance, you know, just paint the picture. We've got a lobby and we've got doors that restrict access into the treatment area. And the team's worried if we get a security fob system, you know, we're making that rushing sort of process. You know, if we've got a hit by a car or an emergency come in,
Mhm.
we've put up an obstacle in the middle there to get that dog from the lobby to the
Gotcha.
back of house area.
Yep.
So obviously, you know, the goal is keeping our team safe late at night, but we
Yep.
are creating an obstacle
Yeah,
as
sure.
well.
Okay, right. Um, so the sense of urgency there has got to be around. You've got to put it in language that they understand. All right, things that are that matter to the team. So what matters to the team from a security point of view? What would be an
Um,
example of something that could happen or has happened?
yeah, well, I just guess being safe overnight, there's not many security systems we have in place at the moment. So nothing stopping, you know, a crazy or angry client from going out the back and causing a whole bunch of havoc.
Yeah.
So definitely that. Team
And how
safety.
bad could that get? Could that be?
Oh, it could literally be deadly.
Mm, right. So access to equipment that could be destroyed.
Yeah, absolutely. Access to, yeah, all our safes, all our drugs, all our
Mhm.
animals, all our team members, everything.
What drugs? You don't have to answer this question, obviously, but um, I assume there's expensive drugs in there. There's some drugs that could kill people.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And harm to individuals. How long would it take to call the police? And do you think if, let's say, let's role play this in our own mind. We've got someone who's just burst through the door, absolutely so pissed off that you've just overcharged them. That's their sense anyway. And how long would it take the cops to get there, do you reckon?
I think half an hour
Hmm.
could wreak a bit of havoc in half an hour.
How much damage could they do in 30 minutes? Right. So now we're creating this sense of urgency around some sort of security device that needs to be installed. And fob, and the fob is the chosen one. So that's the first one. We've got to create a sense of urgency. The second one is, and so you could build on that, couldn't you? And other examples that I've heard used is, my business partner Gary Turnbull talks about, over 80% of dogs have some sort of periodontal disease, and I hope I'm not misquoting him there, but ultimately most veterinary hospitals, when I did a short straw poll of 20 practices I was working with one day and said, how many dentals did you do last week? And they kind of, oh, well, 10. And so how many dogs did you see? There's 100. So there's a huge disparity. Even if you halve Gary's numbers, even if you quarter Gary's numbers, there's a massive disparity there between how many have some form of problem going on and how many are actually being booked in for a treatment. And um, so what do the what in this particular example, what does the practice owner focus on is, certainly patient care and good quality patient care, but also all the money that's been left on the table, trying to raise salaries, trying to compete with, you know, get a return on capital, get so much money invested. It's pretty stressful running a veterinary hospital, and the average return for a veterinary hospital in Australia is 7%. It's pretty pathetic. Six in the bank. Like if you put your cash in there, that's a pretty low return. And so for all the risk and all the headache and everything, so it's important that this stuff happens, right? But if you look at the practice owner or the practice manager, go, yeah, it's all about the money. And then you talk to the vets, they say, well, it's not all about the money for us. So how do you turn that, create a sense of urgency for a clinician who isn't going to get paid a bonus? They don't get paid any more, and they already think they're flat out anyway. Make it about patient care, which is a fairly obvious transition to make, right? So, but that's really all we want to focus on when it comes to the clinicians is a patient care. And then you say, so let's talk about that. What could go wrong? And then when they say, well, a grade 1 becomes a grade 2, becomes a grade 3 pretty quickly, um, then you kind of go, okay, so let's role play the conversation with the client, shall we? You keep telling these clients to come back every year because you think it's a good idea that they do that. And, we try and get our rebook rates over 85% if we can. And that has a huge impact on the success of the practice. How do you get your rebooking rates over 85%? Get the person to come back in every year. And I'm not an idiot, right? I rock in and just start extracting teeth. And I say, how did we get to this place? I didn't even know I was doing the wrong thing by my dog's teeth. And no one had ever lifted the lip. No one's ever graded. No one's ever actually had the conversation with me. So now we're almost tapping into that social resistance to change to say, come on, guys, like, would anyone like to have that conversation with Paul Ainsworth now? Let's role play, right? How's that conversation going to go with Paul? You say to him, you're not a very good financial planner. You've taken a $300, $400 bill into a multi-$1,000 bill just by, doing something we all know we probably should do. And how long does it take to lift the lip? So that's another example of putting it in language that they understand. And money hasn't even come into it, right? I'm not talking about the extra revenue we'll generate out of it. Cool. So that's creating that sense of urgency, but in a language that they understand. The second one is create a guiding coalition. So guiding coalition is not necessarily surrounding yourself with your mates and people who agree with you. It's about taking offline the conversations with the people that you think are going to be problematic and are going to push back. So with your one, Cassidy, you would go to the toughest critic and you'd say, I want to buy you coffee. I need to understand where you're coming from with this. And I want to share some thoughts with you. And I'm going to come around and get to the psychology of change in a little while, and that'll sort of circle back to this. But I think people overestimate their ability to influence an entire team. You just won't. You might influence a senior nurse who will then go and influence all the other nurses. But if you don't get that senior nurse on board, all they do is roll their eyes. It just takes that little nanosecond of the sort of sit back, fold their arms, and go, here we go again, and you've lost everybody. And so you've got to work out who are those people that you feel need to be in the guiding coalition. So I think your one, Lauren, was talking about, historically, we've always done it this way. And so now we want to do something slightly different. And feel free to jump in, Lauren, and clarify at any point.
Hello. Yes.
Yeah. But if you've got that sort of, this is the way we've always done it conversation taking place, there will be some old and bolds in the practice who have the personal power. They may not have the positional power, the rank, but they've been around a long time. In the army, they were the kind of very senior soldiers. And even though I was an officer and there's like 5 ranks between me and them, they were still the influencers. They were the ones that if they just said, no, we're not going to do this, or don't want to do this, they just made my life so hard. So I had to think very carefully about who I brought into that conversation. And it wasn't always the people with a rank. It's often people who are and I'd say, listen, I just want to pick your brain. So your one, Lauren, I'd go, I know we've always done it this way. I want to share some ideas with you. Can you and I just have that conversation offline? So they're not feeling like they've emboldened trying to impress anyone. It's just you and them. And then they say, oh, well, this is stupid, Lauren. Like, we've always done it this way. We shouldn't change. Just say, can I challenge that? And what about if I said this to you? Or what about if I said that to you? What are you thinking when I say that? You say, well, we tried it 2 years ago. You say, okay, could I put to you that the situation was very different 2 years ago? It's just after COVID, things were very different back then. And then by taking people on that journey with you, you give people an opportunity to be heard. And then you say to them, look, let's trial it. Let's just, and I'm getting to the third stage now, which is to create the vision. Let's just trial it, see how it goes. I promise you, if within 7 days we haven't seen a turnaround, we're going to sit down and we're going to go through and we're going to rethink it. But please, just support me. Have I got your support? Yeah, okay, Paul. If it's only for 7 days, that's fine. I'll support you for 7 days. So now now when I go into the big meeting, I've got my guiding coalition who will actually sit there and rather than poo-poo the idea, roll their eyes, fold their arms, I've got 3 strategic people in the room who I know are the heavy lifters in there, and they're the ones that carry the weight. And they are influencing everybody else on my behalf. When I was building Aldi supermarkets, so I'm just checking the time. When I was building Aldi supermarkets, I was the property director back in 1999. So I was Aldi's first employee in Australia, right? And first role was to head up property. So it was myself and Michael Clertis, who was the group managing director, had a little office in Martin Place in Sydney. And I had to go out and find these sites and start, the Germans are coming to town and they're going to completely destroy the Australian market, right? That was the perception. Now, I didn't know one supermarket from another. So for me, it was kind of like, I was very open to hear what people's concerns were, but I knew the facts, right? Now, if I went into every single Aldi supermarket that was built required a full council meeting. For the New Zealanders, Aldi back then was the 4th largest supermarket chain in the world. It's 42 times bigger than the Australian grocery market globally. So it's a huge juggernaut. Right? And everyone thought the Germans were going to just basically rip the guts out of the market, which, as you know, they haven't. I think they're about 14% market share now. But I would go into if I went into a council meeting expecting just to convert all these councillors, they're all being influenced by the local developer who owns the shopping centre that's got a Woolies, right? So I had to find a way. And so what I did is I went on the weekends and sat with all these councillors and took a packet of Aldi biscuits and I sat and had a cup of tea and said, look, let me answer your questions. What questions have you got? Well, we're really concerned about, the local bakery and the local. And I said, okay, so let me alleviate your concerns there. And so I basically did all that heavy lifting. By the time I went into the room, I knew where every person's vote was going to be. There were some people who still pushed back a little bit, but I got the vote up. And out of 42 supermarkets, I don't think we had one that didn't succeed. There was one where I was told to shut up because, well, I probably shouldn't go into, we're being recorded, aren't we, Claire? We shouldn't go on record for this one. But put it this way, the person who owned the land, we were leasing it and building a supermarket on. The person who owned it was very well connected. He just said, Paul, I've done all the heavy lifting, Paul. You just have to keep quiet. It's going to get approved. So that's a guiding coalition. And whilst you're having a conversation with the guiding coalition, you're developing your vision. Now, going back to that dentistry one, right? You might say, okay, can we all agree that over the next 2 weeks, all we're going to do is lift the lip? And we don't need to overcomplicate it. A spreadsheet on the back of a door on a piece of paper with a pencil attached on a clipboard is enough. But if you see a dog, I want you to go yes. And if you lifted the lip, I want you to go put a tick. If you didn't, I want you to put a cross. Because at the end of 2 weeks, I want to be able to say we saw 100 dogs and we lifted the lip on 90%. And you tell me, team, what's a good number? Is 90% realistic? The team go, no, I think it should be 50%. I'm the boss, right? I'm going to say, well, no, I think it needs to be higher than that, right? But we need to land on a number. What do you think? And I've already spoken to the guiding coalition and I've already created a sense of urgency. So they get it, why it's important to do it. So we agree on 80% and then we just track it. And at the end of 2 weeks, we say, right, so we've done that. Let's now move to stage 2, which is going to be grading. So all I want you to do is now lift the lip and grade, and let's see what those percentages look like. And then we sort of work our way all the way through to making a recommendation to the client. And how many recommendations do we make? And it drops off a cliff. Well, now I know where the problem is. So as part of the change process, just simply by adjusting my vision, which is going to 81 dentals next week, which is a silly idea, we've actually worked out as a team together, having established a guiding coalition, and we're going to work through this together, we've actually worked out a plan that's a lot more sustainable. If you remember those 3 things, create a sense of urgency and language that they understand, form your guiding coalition, got to go and identify these people, go and find them out, and don't go to your mates, right? It's already an echo chamber there. They're going to agree with you. That's hopeless. You got to go to the people who are going to give you a hard time and one-on-one and just have a chat to them. And then the third one is create a vision that makes sense. Because if you don't have a plan, I'm not going to follow you out of curiosity. You've got to be really clear, and the guiding coalition will often inform that. So that's two things I've talked about. I've talked about resistance to change and where that comes from, and maybe some things we need to target there on the social side rather than just constantly banging heads together on the technical side. I've talked about the fact that if we're going to plan for change, any change initiative, we've got to think about the preparatory phase of that, really importantly. And the last one I want to talk about, and then we'll sort of cut to questions, or I can just keep talking, is the psychology of change. So 4 stages. So just write these down. First one, complacency. Second one is denial. Thirdly, confusion. And fourth, renewal. I'll just say them one more time. Complacency. People don't even know a change needs to happen. They're completely oblivious. They're just not necessarily head in the sand, but they kind of just think, oh, everything's pretty cool here. We just cruise along and everything's going well. And the hospital's losing money hand over fist, and they're completely oblivious to it. So that's that one. Your one, Cassidy, about the security. They're oblivious to the fact that, because they don't work nights, right? Or whatever, right? So I know you're 24/7 emergency, but they're just oblivious to it. So it hasn't dawned on them. So that's the first part of the sort of psychological process. Second one is denial. And they go, okay, all right, yeah, you've raised this issue. It doesn't affect me. I'm fine. Like, I don't care about. No one's going to come in the middle of the night. I've been working here for years, and people don't burst into the clinic in the middle of the night. It just doesn't happen, right? So denial. Or it might be no one's cleaning the dishes in the break room, right? And so everyone goes, oh, yeah, okay. To be honest, I didn't think it was such a big problem, so I'm complacent, right? But then you raise it and you kind of go, look, I'm getting sick of having to wash up dishes in the break room. Could everyone just please wash their own dishes? And then all of a sudden I go, well, it doesn't affect me because I don't think I leave my dishes dirty in the break room. So that's a good example of just being in denial. By the way, dishes in the break room has nothing to do with dishes. It has everything to do with respect. It's a lack of respect that my time is worth less than your time. So we target dishes, right? It's not dishes, it's respect for each other. And there's lots of conversations we have around respect. Third one is confusion. Okay, maybe, just maybe, I'll concede that I am part of the problem, but I'm not convinced. Like, you haven't totally convinced me that I need to do anything. That's confusion. And the last one is renewal, where I go, you know what? I probably need to step up here. Now, we all go through all 4 rooms. Even your most accountable person goes through every one of those 4 stages. Give you an example. Rock up on Monday morning to work and the same vet and the same senior nurse are sick again. Okay, now the first thing I say is, you're freaking kidding me. I'm in denial. Okay, I don't believe that it's happened yet again. I'm just making an example up, right? Then I go, what on earth are we going to do? Do I need to fire these 2 people? Do I need to warn them? Like, should they be on a performance review? I'm confused, right? And then renewal is where I get to that stage where I go, okay, it is what it is. I need to get on the phone with the locum, probably not judge the situation. Seems a bit odd that it seems to be every Monday that they're off, taking a long weekend. But at least I know what I've got to do now. So you can go through those 4 stages really fast if you're a very highly accountable person, but you will go through all 4 stages. And the problem is we get stuck in denial. Well, now let me go to complacency, right? How do we stop people from being complacent in a practice? Just in the chat line. Just how do we stop that sort of, I didn't realize that was a problem. What are some of the things we can do to really encourage or try and break that down? Yeah. Yeah, sense of ownership. How do you do that, Lauren? Just flesh that one out a bit more. Yeah, educate. So talk about stuff more. Mm-hmm. Yeah, love it. S. Jeffers. Sorry, I don't know your first name, but yeah, have the difficult conversations. Yeah, ask why and how we do things. Am I going to get involved in those difficult conversations with you if every time I open my mouth, you roll your eyes or I get shut down? And this is a problem, right? I feel like it has to be done my way or the highway. I'm a perfectionist. This is the only way we're going to be able to do things. And I never throw it open to you and say, you tell me what's working and what's not working. Where do you think our focus should go to? You know, there's this sort of old sort of understanding of how culture starts. It starts at the bottom with what I experience, which then determines my beliefs, which leads to my actions and results. And people want different results from their team, but their team continually experience the same thing. You want your team to show more initiative and to take more accountability for stuff. Well, what experience do you need to give them that will change that result? Because Einstein said, keep doing the same thing, expect a different results, definition of insanity. It's true. What do you need to do differently as the leader of that team to get a better result? And if your team are being complacent about things and not coming up with new things, going, oh my God, do I have to spoon feed everything to you guys? If you're in that situation, as hard as this is, we as leaders got to look ourselves in the mirror and say, what am I doing that's encouraging that? Do I just spoon feed everything, give directions all the time and give people directives? Or do I actually open it up and say, guys, I have a sense of what's going on, but I need you guys to tell me. What do you think? Are you okay with the way we're currently operating? Okay with our pricing structure? There's one vet in Sydney, did an amazing job. I thought not far from where you are, actually, Claire, Coleroy. She's not from Coleroy, but she wanted to put up the prices, right? And so she said she was concerned that she would get everyone in sort of this denial that prices could be increased. So what she did is she went out to, and most of the resistance, interestingly, didn't come from the vets. It came from the nurses. And so what she did is she got all the nurses together and she got them to do uh, the uh, the costing on a whole range of procedures. I'm sort of paraphrasing now, but let's say she took top 15, 20 procedures and said, right, there's 10 nurses, you three do this, you three do this, and you four do this. Come back in 2 weeks' time, we're going to sit down, we're going to go through it. I want you to fully cost it. Fully cost it. What drugs we use, what equipment we use, how much electricity, I'll tell you how much electricity we use, but you tell us how much time is spent in consult, how much time is spent in surgery, how many people are involved, and then we'll flesh out those costs together. The nurses were gobsmacked at the end of it, but they weren't complacent as to the price of things because this vet, the practice owner, one of three practice owners, had got them involved in the process. And she wasn't being smart or cute. She genuinely said, look, if you're not seeing this, I actually need you to. So let's go through the process. And she said the icing on the cake came from, first of all, they were completely gobsmacked and had no problems with the price rise. The second one that she said the icing on the cake was when she was out in reception and she heard a client saying, you vets are so expensive, to the receptionist. And the nurse turned in support of the receptionist and said, yes, veterinary medicine is very expensive. No apology, she wasn't being an apologetic. She said yes. And it was this moment of, not only was this nurse not confused, so she'd gone through complacency, denial, maybe a bit of denial while they were sort of mapping out what the prices looked like, into a place of confusion, going, I'm still not 100% sure. And then eventually got to a place of renewal after sort of Jenny went through it all with them and mapped it out. And I think that's a really good example of helping a team move through. And the last thing I want to quickly cover off on is, how do you get people out of denial? People are literally sitting there going, nah, not me. And I'm going to give you a non-veterinary example. And I think this is okay to go out of a recording. My daughter might not think so. Oh, it's all right. It's okay. She's good. We were walking to a restaurant, and my youngest daughter, who's 20, was decided she hadn't been well on this holiday, and just things. She was just quite sick and very disappointed, and a lot of time in the hotel room, not well. So we're going out to a restaurant, and she lost it at me walking to the restaurant, right? And I know that it was going to spend a lot of money in this restaurant, and the whole family's walking there, and adult children and stuff, and it's all normally very nice. And she lost it. I said something that triggered her, and I said, you don't get to talk to your dad that way. And so she peeled off back, started speaking to her older sister, and they're chatting, and I went into complete and utter denial. I was completely complacent that this change was about to take place, and I was also a bit complacent as to what I'd said was triggering for her, right? So that was my bad. But then I went into denial, and my son, who's 23 now, he walked up alongside me and he said something really interesting. Oh, first of all, my wife said, Paul, I can't believe that you can't be the adult in this situation and just make amends with our daughter. Like, you're going to ruin the whole night. And what do you think that did? So I'm in denial, right? That I've got anything to do with this, right? I've just been, this tirade of abuse has been given. I'm in complete denial. Drop in the chat line. What do you think I did when I got that feedback from my wife? Did it help, or did it push me deeper into denial? Yeah, exactly, Anna. I completely doubled down. So I just went, no way. No, I actually didn't feel guilty, Sharon. I probably should have, but I didn't. Yeah, I got quite defensive, and I doubled down. And you pull on any of your team members like that, that's what they're going to do, right? And then my son sailed up alongside me and he goes, Dad, that was terrible the way she spoke to you. No one should be spoken to like that, particularly, a daughter talking to a father like that. And what do you reckon that did to my psychology? How did I feel after him saying that to me? Any ideas? Put it in the chat line. Yeah. Validated. Exactly. 3 of you said the same thing. Affirmed. I felt affirmed. So now I'm confused, right? Now I'm no longer in denial, right? I'm just confused. I'm going, bloody hell. Is it me? Is it her? Is my wife right? Should I be the adult in this situation? Does it matter? We're going to go out for dinner and spend all this money. It'd be nice to actually have it as a nice night. It took me about 10 steps to work my way through that. And I walked back, put my arm around her and said, Belle, I think we probably need to find a better way to have these conversations. And she said, I totally agree, Dad. I'm really sorry. And I said, oh, I'm sorry for my contribution. And we had a great night. So now we're in renewal. So let's apply this now into practice. You're going to put up your prices, or you're going to go from a 30-minute to a 20-minute consult, or a 20-minute to 15-minute consult. The first thing the team is going to say to you, if it's anything like all the practice I speak to, they're going to go, are you kidding me? We're already working hard enough. How the hell am I going to get my histories done in 15 minutes? This is just a joke. You expect me to do the full workup of the client. I can't do that in 15 minutes. So that's the sort of resistance you're going to get, right? Now that is denial. It's not a bad thing. I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm just saying they're in denial. You've thought about it. You're looking at the books and you're going, we need to increase our turnover of clients. We don't need 20 minutes or 30 minutes of client, whatever the decision is. So at that point, they're in denial. So how do you treat that, right? Do you go, well, let me show you the books and let me show you the financials and let me show you what's going to happen in this practice. And you should try being in my books, and I'm having to fund this practice and I'm carrying all the risk and you guys just need to work harder and you're all lazy. What do you reckon? Is that going to have the desired effect? That might be what you're thinking, right? But what they've got to hear from you is going to hear me say, I completely get it. Believe me, I get it. I don't know how we're going to get the histories done in 15 minutes. I certainly think you're working hard enough, and I'm not sure how this is going to play out. And whatever else I said was another resistance. Just affirm them. Don't shame them, don't force them into denial, just affirm the fact that, now I'm not talking about, you're not going to give in, right? You're still the owner of the practice, and you've gone through the whole guiding coalition thing, you're creating a vision together, but you're still getting this denial or resistance. So affirming them is then simply say, but we need to give it a crack. We need to see how we go. So let's do this, and let's reduce it to let's do it for a week and see what happens. Let's just do it in the mornings instead of all day. Let's have a think about how we might be able to rethink and do our histories more effectively. What about if we did some training on this? Now, once you affirm them and they kind of go, oh, the boss is listening to me, and he or she has sort of expressed, well, I was in your shoes once, and can I tell you, I'm not saying you're wrong. Now I'm just confused. And that's your objective as a leader, is to get them out of denial and at least get them confused. Because then what we can do together is we can work through that to a point, just some small steps, some slight changes. Let's do the mornings. Let's just do 1 week. Let's see where it lands. Let's see, maybe we could reduce the scope for histories. We don't need war and peace. We just need a short, maybe we could do histories a bit sharper. Maybe there's some different techniques, talk some other practices to doing 15-minute consults. So now I'm kind of going, okay, yeah, all right, well, let's give it a go. I'm happy to give it a go, boss, because you affirmed me rather than making me feel bad. And now I'll follow you. Yeah. Now, you can go from confusion back to denial if that process isn't led very well. And the longer you spend at each stage, the harder it's going to be to progress. So, coupled with any psychological or the psychology of leading through change, not just recognizing between social and technical, but also recognizing these 4 stages that we go through, coupled with that is going to be a need to make sure that we are on a sort of a constant feedback loop, and being willing to actually reflect on what we're doing and come back and say, let's talk about it in a week's time, or let's talk about it tomorrow. Can we just let's just do it for today. Let's just see what happens today. Or maybe changing consult timings is a bit ridiculous, changing it for a day. But maybe it's something to do with the way the roster's structured or whatever. Cool. I'm a bit over, Claire. But should we open it up? Are there any other questions? Let me just go to my email, Lauren. Let's just make sure we hit yours, Lauren. Thank you for sending it through. Actually, Lauren,
Hey, Paul.
yeah.
How you going?
Yeah, good. How are you?
Good, thanks.
Do you want to, we've got 7 minutes. Do we hit yours well enough?
I can see how the principles might apply to my particular scenario. I think my team are wanting the change, so I feel like they're on board for the change. But in terms of habit, they're a bit trigger shy. So it could be an example of, like, I was never able to have like chicken available to my patients. So I'll say, why don't you have chicken available to your patients? Oh, was never allowed to. Okay, well, we've got systems in place where if you feel like you want to get it, I can give you a budget, you can go for it. If you feel like it's best practice, I would agree with that. Cool. 2 weeks later, where's the chicken? Oh, I just didn't feel like it was the right time. Like, they just seem shy and not willing to take that leap. And I guess for me, I maybe need to provide more of a compelling argument why it's okay. I don't know, but that's probably more where I'm coming from with mine, is they're stuck in old habits.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, that's a perfect segue, isn't it, Claire? Claire's thinking the same thing I am. The next masterclass on this in January, I think it's January the 21st, is it, Claire? Yeah. We're talking about habits and changing and goal setting.
Yeah.
Good timing on the 21st, because most of your New Year's resolutions will have died by the 15th of January according to research. So So we'll come together on the 21st and maybe reinvigorate them a little bit. But you know, one little teaser. One thing I will say there is, I'm not if they're on board with it, you create a sense of urgency. You've got a guiding coalition. You've got a vision for it. Now it's a question of changing the habits, or changing your habits. I will say this: we are perfectly aligned now to achieve our current results, right? So if whatever it is you're trying to do in life, your current habits are feeding that. And to change your habits is really difficult, because a habit is a habit, which means it's something that we're used to doing. So you need to change that. And you won't change your habit unless you set up rituals, which are the small micro habits that help the main habit. So, for example, with your one, Lauren, let's say I'm quite sort of following the chicken thing, but that's my lack of clinical. But let's say more chickens. Anyway, so is it chicken food for the dogs? Is it
Like literally a cooked chook? Yeah.
a cooked chook? Okay.
Yeah.
Who's eating the cooked chook?
The patients, not the people.
Okay, so you've got a cooked chook, right? So your ritual, so your current habit is not going to the supermarket and buying a cooked chook.
Or buying it from their own money, for example.
Okay, if that's what it's going to be. So therefore the ritual needs to be at the team meeting, the first thing we talk about is the cooked chook. And if you don't talk about the cooked chook at the start of the team meeting, the cooked chook won't happen.
Yeah.
100%, it won't happen, because we're perfectly aligned. Our current habits are perfectly in line. This is stuff from James Clear, but if you want to look further into it, but we're perfectly aligned with what we're currently doing. It's like, you know, like if you're not going to the gym, right? Here's a better example. No. So you're not going to the gym, okay, in the morning. So you want a new habit, right? So New Year's resolution, I'm going to go to the gym, right? And so you set it all up and you're ready to go to the gym. You even go and buy a membership. And the gyms are very smart, right? They know what happens. And so by the 15th of January, you stop going to the gym. And it's because you didn't create rituals around that. And the ritual would be lay out your clothes the night before. It would be set an alarm, but don't set an alarm next to your bed, because you just reach over and hit snooze. Put it on the other side of the room. If you're not drinking enough water and you need to be more hydrated, buy a drink bottle. The ritual is carrying a drink bottle around. For me, it's a bottle of water on my desk. So my ritual is to fill the jug in the morning and put it on my desk with a glass. 100%, if I don't do that, I will not drink water all day. 100%. Because my current habit is to sit at my desk, start my work, and not think about water. But if it's sitting in front of me, I'll constantly sip it. And I'll get through, you know, whatever, 2 liters of water a day, which is kind of good for me. But I need the ritual to back it up. But we'll talk more about that in January, and we're going to get you to declare your New Year's resolutions if you're brave enough. And then we'll talk about some rituals that might sit behind it. And of course, it starts with goals in the practice, doesn't it? It's goals. You've got to change your habits. You've got to change rituals to change your habits. Yeah.
Thanks, Paul.
Cool. Okay. We're 2 minutes to go. Are there any other questions? I feel like we haven't answered many questions. Good engagement, though, from a few people. Thank you. Cool.
Yeah. If anyone's not feeling comfortable to put the questions, I'm going to put an email address in the chat now, and you can forward them through, and I'll be able to forward them on to Paul, and he'll be able to answer them for you at a later date.
Can I just put a little plug into get behind Vet for Climate Action? They can't live on thin air, and it's so important that you get behind these great initiatives. There's a thing called pro-sociality, which is really good for our mental health. And Claire hasn't asked me to say this, nor has Jeanette Kessels, who started it, but I'm a big fan of Jeanette's and a big fan of what they're doing. So it's a good way for maybe just run an activity for the team or something where the team feel like they're supporting something. It's a great, and it's a wonderful cause. And for the younger generation, they're right across it anyway. So yeah, I think they're doing some really, really great stuff, which is why we're giving our time for this. Yeah.
Yeah, we really appreciate that, Paul, and your time for this evening and the next 3 masterclasses that we have planned. As Paul mentioned,
Yep.
please, we will have our January masterclass up soon. You'll be able to register for that as well. We hope you've enjoyed tonight. Paul, I can't thank you enough for that engaging presentation. Thoroughly enjoyed it.
Oh, good. Thank you. No, I enjoyed it. Thanks everyone for getting involved.
Wonderful. All
Yeah.
right, we'll wrap things up there. As I said, I've popped that email in there, and I will be sending this recording around to everyone that has registered for this evening. So if you think of any more questions as soon as we log off tonight, which is exactly what happens to me 90% of the time, feel free to shoot us an email.
Yeah. Nice one, Sharon. Just picked up your message there. Do it. Okay. And you can always email to or click and pass it on.
Of course.
Thanks,
All right.
everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Paul. Enjoy your
Okay.
evening.
Thanks. See you guys. Bye.